It was almost midnight, and a man sat writing a letter he was certain would be the last thing he ever wrote. Brigadier General Anthony Wayne sat inside a cramped farmhouse near the Hudson River, pen shaking slightly in his hand, while 1,200 of the finest soldiers in the Continental Army stood silently in the dark outside. Their muskets were loaded with nothing, not a single bullet. They were about to storm a cliff-top fortress, armed with little more than bayonets, courage, and a plan born from the worst humiliation of their commander's life. Wayne addressed the letter to his closest friend, asking him to look after his children if he did not survive the night. Then he sealed it, stood up, and walked out to lead what would become one of the boldest assaults of the American Revolution. To understand why Wayne was willing to risk everything that night, you have to go back 2 years earlier to a disaster that nearly destroyed him. In September of 1777, British forces under a general nicknamed No Flint Gray crept into Wayne's sleeping camp near Paoli, Pennsylvania. Gray ordered his men to strip the flints from their muskets so no accidental gunfire would give away the ambush. In total silence, the British tore through Wayne's camp with bayonets alone, killing or wounding over 200 Americans while barely losing any of their own. Wayne escaped, but the damage to his reputation was brutal. His own soldiers began chanting "Remember Paoli" as a battle cry, a phrase that would haunt him for years, a permanent reminder of the night he was caught completely off guard. Wayne demanded a full court-martial to clear his name, and he was acquitted with the highest honors possible. But being found innocent did not erase the humiliation. He carried that night with him through the freezing winter at Valley Forge, where his men shivered without proper shelter, and through the chaos of the Battle of Monmouth, where he held the line after another commander abandoned his position. And it was at Valley Forge that something quietly powerful was happening. A Prussian drill master named Baron von Steuben arrived and began transforming the ragged, half-starving Continental Army into something resembling real professional soldiers, teaching them formation, discipline, and most importantly, how to actually use a bayonet as a weapon instead of a cooking skewer. Wayne watched closely, and he never forgot what he was learning. By the summer of 1779, the British had seized a rocky peninsula called Stony Point on the Hudson River, fortifying it with cannons and sharpened wooden barricades called abatis. The position rose nearly 150 feet above the water and was almost impossible to approach except across one narrow causeway flanked by flooded marshland. General George Washington refused to attack it head-on, knowing it was a trap designed to lure his army into open ground where British regulars could crush them. Instead, he sent spies disguised as civilians to map the weaknesses in the fort, climbed a nearby mountain himself with a telescope to study the defenses, and slowly pieced together a plan that seemed almost suicidal on paper. Then he chose Anthony Wayne to lead it, giving him something almost unheard of in that army: full authority to shape the attack however he saw fit. The plan Wayne built was strange and brilliant, and it was built entirely from the pain of Paoli. His soldiers would carry muskets, but every single one would be unloaded, because a single accidental shot in the dark could alert the entire garrison and get everyone killed. The attack would be conducted almost silently, using bayonets only, the exact tactic that had once been used to devastate his own men. If Wayne noticed the irony of turning his worst nightmare into his greatest weapon, he never wrote it down, but his soldiers understood it completely. Leading each column would be a group of volunteers called the Forlorn Hope, men who knew they would be the first to die, tasked with hacking through the wooden barricades so everyone behind them could break through. On the night of July 15th, the men marched 15 miles through Rocky Mountain trails, still not knowing their destination, forced to detain any civilian they encountered along the way so word could not leak to the British. Only when they reached the final staging point, less than 2 miles from the fort, did Wayne finally tell them what they were about to do. Every soldier pinned a small square of white paper to his cap so they could recognize each other in total darkness, and they were given a small ration of rum before forming into columns with bayonets fixed. At 11:30 that night, under thick cloud cover that killed the moonlight, the order finally came, and 1,200 men began walking silently toward a cliff full of enemy cannons. The southern column waded through marshland that rose to their chests, holding their useless muskets above their heads, taking 30 agonizing minutes just to reach the first line of barricades. As the diversionary attack opened fire at the causeway, drawing British attention exactly where Wayne had predicted, his real force hit the slopes from the flanks. It was during this chaos that a British musket ball struck Wayne directly in the head, dropping him to the ground, bleeding and dazed. Any other commander might have been pulled back to safety, but Wayne refused, shouting an order that would define the rest of his life. "Carry me into the fort, for if this wound is fatal, I will die at the head of my men." His soldiers lifted him and kept moving forward into the darkness. Within 25 minutes, it was over. The British garrison, caught completely off guard on 2 sides at once, surrendered entirely. 15 Americans were killed, compared to nearly 500 British casualties and captures. And remarkably, despite years of screaming, "Remember Pauli," Wayne's men showed mercy to every soldier who surrendered, instead of seeking revenge. A British commander later admitted he had never seen such restraint from an enemy during the entire war. Word reached Washington before dawn, with a message that still echoes through history. The fort and garrison are ours, and our men behaved like men determined to be free. Stony Point did not win the war on its own, and the Americans abandoned the position just days later, once they realized it could not be defended long term. But that was never really the point of the mission. What mattered was proving, once and for all, that the Continental Army could match the British at their most feared tactic and beat them decisively at their own game. Wayne earned a gold medal from Congress, one of only 11 awarded during the entire Revolution, and a new nickname that stuck with him for life: Mad Anthony. Not because he was insane, but because only a madman would have dared attempt something so reckless, and somehow made it work. He went on to fight until the very end of the war, later negotiated peace treaties on the frontier, and died still serving his country more than 20 years after he first put on a uniform. But the moment that defined him forever happened in 30 minutes of darkness on a cliff above the Hudson River, where a broken man picked up the very weapon that once humiliated him and used it to redeem everything he had